What if the kindness you were praised for was the trap that has been draining your life? What if generosity wasn't a virtue, but the reason you lost your power?
What if the virtue you were raised to admire is the very trap that destroys your life? What if generosity, the thing you're praised for, is actually the #1 reason people drain your time, your money, and your power? Today, we open the darkest page in Machiavelli's philosophy, the page that was never meant for good people. Generosity is beautiful, at least that's what the world taught you. But behind the smiles, behind the praise, behind every "you're such a good person," lies a truth so dark and so uncomfortable that most people will spend their entire lives avoiding it. Human beings do not respect unlimited kindness. They exploit it, they drain it, and eventually, they destroy the person who carries it. This is why Machiavelli, the man who understood human psychology centuries before modern science, gave us one of the most controversial warnings in history. Never be generous. Not because generosity is wrong, but because generosity without awareness is the fastest road to weakness, poverty, and emotional slavery. In this episode, we dive into the psychology behind giving, taking, manipulation, power, and the hidden motives people carry behind their smiles. Part 1. The roots of the lie. How generosity was used to control you. They didn't tell you the truth when you were young. They didn't tell you why they praised you every time you shared your toys, your food, your time. They didn't tell you why they smiled when you gave something away, even if it meant losing something precious to you. Because from the very beginning, your mind wasn't being shaped for strength. It was being shaped for obedience. You were not being taught generosity. You were being trained for compliance. There's a moment in every child's life, small, forgettable, invisible to adults, but it marks the exact second when the subconscious mind learns a rule that will haunt them for decades. If I give, people love me. If I refuse, they punish me. This rule becomes the blueprint for your self-worth. It becomes the lens through which you interpret relationships, success, love, friendships, work, and even your identity. It buries itself deep in your subconscious like a parasite that feeds on your need for acceptance. From that moment on, you don't just give because you want to. You give because you're terrified of what will happen if you don't. That's not generosity. That's fear dressed as virtue. And society knows exactly what it's doing. Because the world does not run on strength alone. It runs on people who cannot say no, people who give more than they should, people who sacrifice their peace to maintain an image, people who drain themselves dry so others don't feel discomfort, people who mistake emotional slavery for kindness. The world rewards these people with compliments. It gives them a sense of moral superiority. It tells them they're good, kind, selfless, amazing. But watch closely. The same people doing the praising are the ones benefiting from your compliance. They don't respect you. They don't admire you. They use you. And the moment you stop giving, the moment you break the pattern, the moment you finally say no, their masks fall off. The praise disappears. The smiles vanish. The warmth turns cold. Because you were never loved for who you are. You were loved for what you gave. This is the truth Machiavelli understood centuries ago. This is the darkness he tried to reveal when he said, "Generosity will ruin you." Not because generosity itself is wrong, but because generosity without awareness is a weapon pointed at your own heart. Look at your life. Look at the people around you. Think of every moment you felt drained, unappreciated, taken for granted, used. Was it because you were too kind? No, it was because you were trained to believe that kindness without boundaries is noble. But it's not noble. It's self-destruction disguised as morality. Your subconscious learned a lie. Good people give endlessly. Good people don't refuse. Good people sacrifice. Good people don't disappoint anyone. And so you grew up believing that love must be earned, that your worth depends on how much you give, that you must carry other people's burdens to deserve acceptance. But here's the part nobody wants to hear. Unlimited kindness is not kindness. Unlimited kindness is weakness. Unlimited kindness is an invitation to be consumed. People don't respect those who give endlessly. People don't protect them. People don't stand up for them. We admire strength. We admire boundaries. We admire clarity, self-respect. decisiveness. Even children instinctively respect the friend who says, "No, you can't take this," more than the one who gives away everything to avoid conflict. Unlimited generosity is not a virtue in nature, not in animals, not in ecosystems, not in psychology, and not in human society. Everything in nature survives by balancing giving and protecting. A tree produces fruit, but it protects its roots. A river flows, but it never pours out more water than it receives. A mother feeds her child, but she must eat first or both will die. Only humans are taught to give in a way that destroys them, because a drained, compliant, emotionally empty human is the easiest kind to control. Machiavelli saw this centuries ago. He studied kings, peasants, soldiers, and citizens. He learned that people only value what is scarce. People only respect what they fear to lose. People only admire those who preserve themselves. And the man who gives too much loses everything that makes him respectable. His time, his money, his energy, his boundaries, his identity. He becomes a well that everyone drinks from until there is nothing left. And when the well dries up, they don't thank it for years of water. They abandon it. You've lived some part of this story. You've felt the sting of being taken for granted. You've wondered why people don't appreciate your sacrifices. You've wondered why they leave once you stop giving. The answer is not that they are evil. The answer is simpler, darker, and more universal. Human beings exploit what they do not fear losing, and you taught them you were disposable, not because you are, but because you acted like you were. This first part of your journey is not about blaming yourself. It's about awakening. It's about seeing the invisible programming that shaped your entire life. It's about understanding that you were never weak. You were conditioned to behave weak. And once you see the programming, you can break it. Because real generosity, the kind that strengthens you instead of destroying you, comes from awareness, boundaries, intention, and self-respect. But that's something we'll unlock in the next parts of this episode. For now, just let this truth sink into your subconscious. You were not born to be consumed. You were born to be powerful, and power begins with refusing to give yourself away. Part 2. Why people lose respect for you when you're too generous. Most people don't want to admit this, not to others, and definitely not to themselves. But deep inside, in the place where the subconscious makes quiet decisions, there is a brutal truth about human nature. People do not respect what comes too easily. People do not value what they did not fight for. And people do not honor what they believe they can replace. When you give too much, your time, your money, your energy, your emotional availability, you don't become more lovable, you become less visible. It's a paradox that destroys millions of relationships, friendships, marriages, and careers. The more you give without boundaries, the less people see your worth. This isn't because people are evil. It's because the human brain is wired to devalue abundance. Scarcity creates value. Effort creates respect. Difficulty creates admiration. Think about it. Diamonds are valuable because they're rare. Gold matters because it's limited. Even water, the source of life, becomes sacred when it's scarce. But what about the person who gives endlessly? Who is always available? Who always says yes? Who sacrifices their rest, their finances, their mental health to help others? They slowly turn into a background object, a silent resource, a human service station. And people don't appreciate service stations. They use them. This is why Machiavelli warned rulers and all humans to avoid generosity without restraint. Because generosity doesn't make people love you. It teaches them that your limits don't matter. Let's break this down deeper. 1. People respect what they fear losing. Ask yourself honestly, when have you respected someone the most? When they were constantly available? Or when they had standards, boundaries, self-respect? People admire those who protect their time. People respect those who say no. People fear disappointing someone with strong convictions. People watch their behavior around someone with clear boundaries. Now compare that to the overgiver. The overly generous person is predictable, safe, non-threatening, easy to obtain, easy to manipulate. Their presence becomes a comfort for others, but their value becomes invisible. 2. The brain adapts quickly to kindness. The first time you do someone a favor, they're grateful. The second time, they're thankful. The third time, they're comfortable. The fourth time, they expect it. The fifth time, they feel entitled. And when you stop, they get angry, not because they're bad, but because their brain normalized your kindness. Your generosity became routine, and routines are never respected, only expected. 3. Unlimited giving is interpreted as weakness. Humans are instinct-driven creatures. On a primal level, people subconsciously judge others based on strength and vulnerability. When you give without limitation, you signal something dangerous. I don't protect myself. To manipulative people, this is blood in the water. To neutral people, this is a quiet indicator that your time and energy must not be worth much. To strong people, this shows you lack boundaries, which makes them respect you less. 4. The dangerous shift. From appreciation to expectation to resentment. This shift happens silently, invisibly, often without either person noticing. It goes like this. You give because you care. They accept because they appreciate. You continue giving. They normalize it. You give more. They stop seeing it. You get tired. They get angry. The resentment is not about the act. It's about the withdrawal. It's like giving someone oxygen every day, and then one morning you decide to stop. They don't ask, "Why did you give me oxygen for so long?" They scream, "How dare you take it away?" This is the psychological trap of the overgiver. You teach people what to expect, and they hold you hostage to their expectations. 5. Overgiving destroys personal identity. When you define yourself by what you give, you slowly forget who you are without giving. You become the helpful one, the available one, the reliable one, the one who saves everyone, the one who fixes everything. Your identity shrinks into a role designed for other people's convenience, and once you are no longer convenient, you are no longer needed. This is the dark side of generosity most people never confront, not because they don't see it, but because facing it means facing the horrifying possibility that the love they received was conditional. The validation they depended on was purchased. The relationships they built were transactions, not connections. Machiavelli understood this when he wrote that generosity creates dependency, and dependency creates resentment. Because the more you give, the more people expect. And the more they expect, the less they appreciate. And the less they appreciate, the more they blame you when things go wrong. 6. Respect requires balance, not sacrifice. True respect comes from symmetry. Balance in effort, balance in boundaries, balance in emotional investment. Overgiving destroys this symmetry. When one person becomes the emotional or financial parent, the other becomes the emotional child. Children don't respect their parents' exhaustion. They demand more. They complain. They feel entitled. That is exactly what happens when generosity becomes a lifestyle instead of a choice. Down 7. The hidden law. People chase what withdraws and ignore what overoffers. You've seen this dynamic in relationships, friendships, careers, and even pets. Pull away a little. They come closer. Give too much. They walk away. Humans chase value, not availability. They pursue scarcity, not abundance. They desire mystery, not predictability. Overgiving kills all three. 8. Generosity without self-respect is not moral. It is self-erasure. The world will applaud you for it. People will praise you, but they won't save you when you collapse. They won't refill your energy. They won't protect you, because they never saw your giving as sacrifice. They saw it as your role, a role you fulfilled faithfully until it consumed you. This is why Machiavelli said generous people eventually become desperate, not from lack of giving, but from lack of being seen. And once you are no longer seen, you no longer matter. This is the coldest truth of human psychology and the hardest truth for generous people to accept. Part 3. The hidden fear. When generosity becomes a psychological escape from yourself, there is a moment, silent, invisible, impossible to admit, when generosity stops being kindness and becomes fear. It's not the fear of losing money, not the fear of losing time, not even the fear of being used. It's the deeper fear, the fear nobody talks about, the fear that operates in the background of your entire life, the fear of being unloved unless you give. Most people think they are generous because they are good-hearted, but in reality, many people give because they are terrified of what might happen if they stop. They fear rejection. They fear abandonment. They fear disappointing others. They fear conflict. They fear being seen as selfish or cold. They fear the moment someone looks at them and says, "You changed." The scariest part? Most people don't even know this fear exists inside them. It sits quietly in the subconscious, controlling behavior, controlling tone, controlling decisions, controlling relationships, controlling life. And society rewards it. Parents reward it. Teachers reward it. Friends reward it. Partners reward it. Wow, you're so kind. You're such a giving person. You always help everyone. But they're not praising generosity. They're praising your compliance. They're praising how predictable you are. They're praising how unlikely you are to say no. Unlimited generosity is not kindness. It is fear disguised as goodness. And this fear shapes everything. 1. You give because confrontation terrifies you. One of the darkest truths about human psychology is this. People who overgive are often terrified of conflict. They fear uncomfortable conversations. They fear tension. They fear disappointing others. They fear someone raising their voice. They fear becoming the villain in someone else's story. So instead of saying no, they say maybe. Instead of setting boundaries, they stay silent. Instead of protecting themselves, they give and give and give. This is not generosity. This is avoidance. The subconscious whispers, if I give them what they want, I won't have to deal with the fallout. If I sacrifice myself, at least no one will be angry. If I stay kind, maybe they won't leave. This fear manipulates you far more than any person ever could. 2. You give because your self-worth is fragile. People who overgive often carry a deep wound inside them, a wound that says, you are not enough by yourself. So they try to buy worthiness. They don't buy it with money. They buy it with emotional labor, time, energy, availability. Every favor they do becomes a silent question. Do you love me now? Do you value me now? Do you see me now? But the problem is brutal. The more you try to earn love, the less lovable you appear. People don't admire insecurity. People don't cherish self-erasure. People don't love someone who is terrified of being unloved. They tolerate them. They use them. They grow bored of them. And the overgiver, without realizing it, keeps feeding the wound by giving more. 3. You give because saying no feels dangerous. The human brain is wired for survival. When you were young, saying no may have led to punishment, shame, guilt, or emotional withdrawal. So your subconscious learned a dangerous lesson. Refusal equals pain. Generosity became your shield, your protection, your survival strategy. As an adult, you no longer fear the punishment itself. You fear the emotional echo of it. Saying no feels like stepping into danger. The subconscious treats disagreement as a threat, so you choose the safer path. Compliance. Sure, I can help. No problem. It's okay, I'll handle it. Even when your mind screams, I don't want this, I can't do this, I'm tired. But fear wins, and fear always wants you to give. 4. You give because you don't want to face your own emptiness. This is the part most people never admit. Sometimes we give because giving keeps us distracted. When you are constantly solving other people's problems, you don't have to look at your own. When you are constantly making others happy, you don't have to confront your sadness. When you are constantly carrying others, you don't have to face how heavy your own life feels. Generosity becomes anesthesia, an escape, a way to avoid the silence where truth hides. And truth is unbearable for many people. So they run, they give, they serve, they people please, they smile, they ignore themselves, they abandon themselves. Because facing yourself is sometimes scarier than being used. 5. You give because being needed gives you purpose. There is another subconscious trap. Being needed can feel like being loved. When people depend on you, it gives you a sense of identity, a sense of purpose, a reason to exist. But dependency is not love, it's reliance. And reliance is temporary. The moment they stop needing you, they leave. And you are left with nothing but the emptiness you were hiding behind your generosity. 6. You give because you fear being alone at its core. Overgiving is often a defense against loneliness. The subconscious believes, if I keep giving, they won't leave me. If I'm generous, I'll be important. If I sacrifice myself, I will always belong. But the truth is devastating. The more you give to avoid loneliness, the lonelier you become. Because people don't bond with someone who erases themselves. People bond with someone who has a strong identity, with someone who stands firm, with someone who knows their limits, with someone who respects themselves. Unlimited kindness attracts users, not partners. Unlimited generosity attracts takers, not givers. Unlimited availability attracts abusers, not friends. 7. Giving becomes your personality, and that is the ultimate trap. Over time, people don't see you as a person. They see you as the generous one, the reliable one, the helper, the fixer, the one who never complains. You become a function, not a human. And when you stop functioning, they replace you. This is the darkest form of self-betrayal, building your identity around what you give instead of who you are. Because when giving becomes your identity, you disappear. Part 4. Machiavelli's warning: why generosity destroys power, respect, and personal authority. Niccolo Machiavelli did not write for the weak. He did not write for people who wanted to be liked. He did not write for people who built their identity around kindness. He wrote for one type of human being, the one who wants to survive in a world ruled by power, fear, scarcity, and manipulation. And when he looked at human nature, raw, unfiltered, brutally honest, he discovered a paradox that most people still refuse to face. Generosity destroys authority. Generosity drains resources. Generosity creates dependency, and dependency creates resentment. To Machiavelli, unlimited kindness was a political suicide. But beyond politics, he saw it as psychological suicide as well. Let's break down his warning, not as a political lesson, but as a blueprint for understanding how humans truly operate. 1. Generosity weakens your perceived value. Machiavelli understood something modern psychology only recently confirmed. Humans judge value based on scarcity, not abundance. When something is rare, people fear losing it. When something is abundant, people take it for granted. A person who gives too easily sends a subconscious signal. My time, energy, help, money are not valuable. Even if you don't say this out loud, your behavior broadcasts it. Machiavelli knew rulers who gave too much were seen not as benevolent, but as weak. Because giving without restraint says one dangerous thing: I do not protect myself, and people do not respect those who cannot protect themselves. 2. Generosity creates dependency, and dependency eventually turns into hatred. Imagine a king who gives his people everything: money, food, comfort, privileges. At first they love him, then they expect it, then they depend on it. And the moment he cannot provide, they despise him. They don't say, he gave us so much for years. They say, he failed us. This is the core of Machiavelli's warning. People will hate you for the same generosity they once praised, because dependency makes people feel insecure, and humans hate feeling insecure. The same happens in your relationships. When people depend on your emotional labor, your availability, your sacrifices, they don't feel gratitude, they feel entitlement, and entitlement always evolves into resentment. 3. Generosity destroys your authority because it makes you predictable. Power requires unpredictability. It requires the ability to surprise, deny, refuse, and decline. But the overly generous person is predictable. Everyone knows they will say yes. Everyone knows they will help. Everyone knows they will sacrifice. Predictability removes power. It removes mystery. It removes tension. It removes respect. A person without boundaries is not seen as strong. They are seen as a resource, not a leader. 4. Generosity attracts exploiters, manipulators, and emotional parasites. Machiavelli understood that generosity is a beacon, but not for good people. It is a beacon for users, manipulators, narcissists, emotional vampires, people who smell weakness, people who hunt for easy targets. Nothing attracts the wrong person faster than someone who gives too much. Manipulative people have radar-like sensitivity. They feel your lack of boundaries before you notice theirs. To them, a generous person is not kind. They are available prey. This is what Machiavelli meant when he said, if you must choose, it is safer to be feared than loved. Not because fear is better than love, but because love without boundaries invites predators. 5. Generosity destroys your strategic advantage. Power is not about domination, it's about leverage. Leverage comes from 3 things. 1. control over your resources. 2. Selective giving. 3. The ability to say no. Generosity destroys all three. When you give too much, you lose control over your energy and resources. When you give indiscriminately, you remove the value of your contributions. When you never refuse, you erase your leverage. Machiavelli wasn't telling you to become cruel. He was telling you to become strategic. Give to those who deserve it. Give when it increases your value, not when it drains it. Give from abundance, not from fear. 6. Generosity makes you emotionally replaceable. This is the darkest truth of all. If you define yourself by what you give, then someone who gives more will replace you. A more generous friend, a more generous partner, a more generous co-worker, a more generous helper. Because if your identity is, I am the one who gives, you have built a role that anyone can play better than you. This is why people who give too much often get replaced by the very people they helped. When your worth depends on generosity, your worth can be easily outsourced. 7. Machiavelli believed true power comes from controlled generosity. Generosity is not evil. It is necessary. It is beautiful. It is noble. But only when used with intention, boundaries, strategy, self-respect, clarity, strength. Machiavelli's real message wasn't, never give. It was, never give in ways that weaken you. Because when generosity weakens you, it strengthens everyone else at your expense. That is the psychological trap. That is the moral trap. That is the emotional trap. And escaping it requires understanding one thing. You cannot be respected if you do not respect your own limits. Part 5. How to be generous without becoming weak. The psychology of protected giving. If the previous parts exposed the dark side of generosity, this part reveals its powerful side. Because generosity is not the enemy. Weakness is. Self-abandonment is. Lack of boundaries is. True generosity, the kind that strengthens you instead of destroying you, comes from awareness, intention, and self-respect. This is not about giving less. It's about giving from a place of power. Here is how you rebuild your identity, reclaim your boundaries, and transform generosity into a weapon of strength rather than a doorway to exploitation. 1. You must separate generosity from identity. Most people who overgive don't give from kindness. They give from identity. I'm the helper. I'm the good one. I'm the reliable one. I'm the one who makes everyone happy. But this identity is a prison, because the moment you stop giving, you feel worthless, you feel guilty, you feel empty. To escape this trap, you must remind yourself, you are valuable because you exist, not because you give. Generosity is something you do, not something you are. When you make this separation, you take the first step toward true self-respect. 2. Give from abundance, never from emptiness. There is a law in psychology stronger than any moral principle. You cannot give what you do not have. If you give love while you are empty, you are not giving love. You are giving fear. If you give money while you are drowning, you are not giving generosity. You are giving desperation. If you give time while you are exhausted, you are not giving kindness. You are giving self-erasure. Healthy generosity begins when you stop giving from your core and start giving from your overflow. Give when you have energy, not when you're drained. Give when you feel safe, not when you're frightened. Give when you choose, not when you feel obligated. This transforms generosity from a burden into a choice. 3. Set boundaries that protect your emotional world. A boundary is not a wall. A boundary is a filter. It doesn't keep everyone out. It keeps the wrong people out. There are 4 boundaries every generous person must master. A. Emotional boundaries. You are not responsible for other people's feelings. You are not obligated to make everyone happy. B. Time boundaries. You decide when you are available. Not everyone gets access. C. Energy boundaries. Your energy is sacred. Protect it like gold. D. Financial boundaries. Your money is not a tool for validation. Do not let guilt control your spending. Boundaries do not make you selfish. Boundaries make you real. Because only real people have limits. 4. Give selectively, not universally. You must unlearn the idea that generosity should be automatic. Automatic giving is emotional slavery. Selective giving is emotional intelligence. Give only to people who appreciate, people who reciprocate, people who respect your boundaries, people who don't punish you for saying no, people who don't see your kindness as an obligation. The truth is simple. Some people deserve your generosity. Most people deserve your boundaries. 5. Use generosity strategically, not reflexively. There is a difference between reactive generosity, giving because you're afraid, and strategic generosity, giving because you choose to strengthen connection, loyalty, or trust. Strategic generosity builds respect. You give occasionally, you give intentionally, you give when it matters, you give in ways that empower both you and the other person. This type of giving creates admiration, not expectation. 6. Learn the power of a well-timed no. Saying no is not rejection, it is self-protection. Strong people say no with clarity, not anger, not guilt, not apology. Say it calmly. I'm not able to do that right now. I can't commit to this. I'm not available for that. When you master no, your yes becomes meaningful again, because what is rare becomes valuable. 7. Maintain unpredictability to preserve respect. Humans respect what they cannot fully predict. If you always say yes, people lose respect. If you sometimes say no, people pay attention. You don't need to play games. You just need to protect your autonomy. Be generous sometimes. Be unavailable sometimes. Be helpful sometimes. Be focused on yourself sometimes. This balance restores dignity. The rebirth of power, your new life, begins the moment you stop giving yourself away. You've reached the end of this journey, but for you, this is not an ending. This is a beginning, because now you understand the truth. You were never weak. You were never too kind. You were never too generous. You were simply unprotected. You were giving from fear instead of strength. You were giving to be loved instead of giving because you are lovable. You were giving to avoid abandonment instead of giving from abundance. But that version of you, the version that apologized for existing, that tried to earn love, that carried everyone's weight but your own, that version dies today. Right now, in this exact moment, you are reborn. Reborn into someone who gives with intention, someone who loves with boundaries, someone who knows their worth, someone who protects their energy, someone who refuses to be drained, someone who finally understands that you cannot save others by sacrificing yourself, but you can inspire others by saving yourself. You are not here to be consumed. You are here to become powerful. You are here to choose yourself. And when you choose yourself, the world begins to choose you. This is the shift you've been waiting for. This is your awakening. Now listen carefully. If this episode opened something inside you, if it forced you to see the hidden patterns in your life, if it made you question the lies you were taught, if it gave you the strength to reclaim your identity, then don't walk away silently. Subscribe to Truth. Join the movement. Be part of a community that sees the world as it really is, not as society pretends it to be. Hit the like button. Share this video with someone who needs to wake up. Leave a comment telling us which part hit you the hardest. You are not alone in this journey. You're just getting started. And we're walking this path together. This is truth, and the truth is where your power begins.